I'm David, 32, male. I live in a mid-sized suburban house just outside of Seattle, a place I bought with my own blood, sweat, and tears. Literally. I work as a construction site manager, spending my days surrounded by concrete, steel, and dust, building the foundations for other people's lives while, unbeknownst to me, my own foundation was rotting away. I live with my wife, Sarah, or at least I did until the paramedics had to wheel her out of our bedroom on a gurney. It's funny how a single bottle of adhesive can fix a broken vase but absolutely destroy a life. You might think you know what revenge looks like, maybe serving divorce papers at work or keying a car. But sometimes revenge is sticky, messy, and ends up in the emergency room with a team of doctors trying to suppress their laughter. I didn't set out to be a villain. I just wanted to make sure that if they were going to be inseparable, they should really commit to it. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. If you work in construction, you learn pretty quickly that the most dangerous cracks aren't the big, jagged ones you see on the surface. The big ones are obvious, you can patch them, reinforce them, or tear the wall down and start over. No, the dangerous ones are the hairline fractures, the microscopic shifts in the foundation that happen deep underground where the light doesn't reach. They grow slowly, silently, feeding on pressure and time, until one day the whole structure comes crashing down on top of you. That's exactly what my marriage was like, though I was too busy checking blueprints and arguing with subcontractors to notice the ground shifting beneath my feet. I've been a site manager for a large development firm for about 6 years. It's a good job, but it's hard. I wake up at 4:30 a.m. every morning, drink coffee that tastes like battery acid, and spend 12 hours breathing in silica dust and shouting over the roar of excavators. My hands are rough, my back aches constantly, and I usually come home smelling like diesel and wet drywall. But I did it for us. I did it for Sarah. Sarah and I met in college. She was studying marketing, and I was in civil engineering. She was everything I wasn't: polished, articulate, social, and vibrant. I was the quiet guy in the flannel shirt who liked to build things. When we got married 4 years ago, I promised her I'd build us a life she could be proud of. I worked double shifts, took on extra projects, and climbed the ladder so she could have the nice car, the walk-in closet, and the annual vacations to places where the water is turquoise and the sand is white. For the first 3 years, it felt like we were a team. I was the bedrock, and she was the structure. But about 6 months ago, the weather changed. It started with small things. You know, the kind of things you brush off because you love someone and you trust them. She stopped asking about my day. I'd come home exhausted, boots covered in mud, wanting nothing more than a warm meal and 20 minutes of conversation with my wife. Instead, I'd find her on the couch, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up when the door opened. "Hey, honey," I'd say, trying to muster some energy. "Project on 4th Street was a nightmare today. The concrete pour got delayed again." She'd mumble, her thumb flicking rapidly across the screen. "That's nice, David. Nice. It was a disaster. We're 3 days behind schedule." "I said that's nice," she'd snap, finally looking up, her eyes cold and annoyed. "Can't you see I'm busy? I've been dealing with clients all day. I don't need to hear about concrete the second you walk in." I would retreat, feeling guilty. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being insensitive. She had a high-pressure job too, managing marketing campaigns for tech startups. I tried to be more considerate, asking about her day instead, but the answers became shorter, vaguer. It was fine, same old. Don't worry about it. Then came the physical distance. In the beginning, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. Even after a long day, we'd curl up on the couch, her head on my chest, just watching TV. But slowly, an invisible wall was erected down the center of our king-sized bed. If I reached out to touch her arm, she'd flinch. If I tried to kiss her goodbye in the morning, she'd turn her cheek. "I'm just tired, David," she'd say, pulling the duvet tighter around herself. "I'm stressed. Don't take it personally." But how do you not take it personally when the person you vowed to spend your life with looks at you like you're a stranger who wandered into their house by mistake? The breaking point of my ignorance, the moment the hairline fracture became a visible crack, happened on a Tuesday in November. It was our 4th anniversary. I had arranged to leave the site early, which is a logistical nightmare involving 3 different foremen and a lot of favors. I showered at the gym near work so I wouldn't smell like a construction site, put on my best suit, and picked up a bouquet of her favorite lilies and a reservation at the Italian place where we had our first date. I got home at 5:30 p.m. expecting to surprise her. Her car was in the driveway, which was odd because she usually worked until 6. I unlocked the front door, a smile plastered on my face, the flowers heavy in my hand. The house was silent. Not the peaceful silence of an empty home, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a room where something has just been whispered. "Sarah," I called out, loosening my tie. "Upstairs," she yelled back. Her voice sounded strained, high-pitched. I walked up the stairs, my boots thudding softly on the carpet. When I pushed open the bedroom door, Sarah was standing by the closet. She was fully dressed in a new outfit I hadn't seen before, a tight, crimson dress that hugged her curves in a way that made my mouth dry. Her hair was done up, her makeup was flawless, and she smelled like the expensive perfume I bought her last Christmas, the one she said was too fancy for everyday use. She looked beautiful. And she looked guilty. "Wow," I said, stopping in the doorway. "You look incredible. Did you remember it was our anniversary? Or am I just the luckiest guy in the world?" She froze, her hand hovering over her jewelry box. She turned to me, and for a split second, I saw panic in her eyes before she masked it with a tight, artificial smile. "Anniversary," she repeated, her voice faltering. "Oh, right. Yes, of course." "Happy anniversary, David." She didn't move toward me. She didn't smile with her eyes. She stood there like a deer caught in headlights. "I made reservations at Giovanni's," I said, holding out the flowers. "Table for 2 at 7. I thought we could celebrate properly." She stared at the flowers as if they were a bomb I had just handed her. She took them tentatively, setting them down on the dresser without smelling them. "David, that's really sweet," she said, wringing her hands. "But I can't go to dinner tonight." I felt my stomach drop. "What? Why not?" "It's our anniversary." "Sarah, I know," she said quickly, walking past me to the mirror and adjusting an earring. But something came up at work, a huge crisis with the Delta account. I have to go meet the team for an emergency strategy session. It's going to be a late night. "In a cocktail dress?" I asked, my voice flat. She paused, catching my eye in the mirror. "We're meeting the clients at a lounge downtown. It's a formal setting, David. You know how tech bros are. Appearance is everything. You didn't mention this morning." I pressed, feeling a heat rise in my chest. "You said your calendar was clear." "It just happened," she snapped, spinning around to face me. "Why do you have to interrogate me? Do you think I want to work on our anniversary? I'm doing this so we can pay the mortgage on this house you insist on maintaining." That stung. It was a low blow, and she knew it. I paid the mortgage. I paid for the renovations. I paid for the landscaping. Her salary was her fun money. I just wanted to take my wife to dinner. I said quietly, the fight draining out of me. She softened, but it felt rehearsed. She walked over and placed a hand on my chest, patting me condescendingly. "I'm sorry, David. I really am. We'll do dinner this weekend, okay? I promise. Just order a pizza or something. Don't wait up." She grabbed her purse and breezed past me. I stood there, smelling the lingering scent of her perfume mixed with the earthy smell of the lilies she had abandoned on the dresser. I heard the front door close, then the sound of her car engine starting. I walked over to the window and watched her back out of the driveway. As she turned onto the main road, I noticed something. She wasn't heading toward the city, where her office and the downtown lounges were. She was turning left, toward the upscale residential district on the other side of town. I stood there for a long time, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I didn't order a pizza. I took off my suit, put my work clothes back on because they felt more honest, and sat in the dark living room with a beer staring at the wall. That was the night the crack opened up. I didn't have proof, not really. Maybe the client meeting was at a house. Maybe she needed to pick something up. But deep down, in the gut instinct that had kept me safe on dangerous job sites for years, I knew. My wife wasn't working. She was building a life that didn't include me. And I was just the fool paying for the materials. After the anniversary disaster, the dynamic in the house shifted from cold to frigid. I tried to convince myself I was paranoid. Maybe she really was busy. Maybe the stress of the Delta account was real. I wanted to believe her because the alternative was too painful to process. I loved Sarah. I had built my entire adult identity around being her husband. If that was a lie, then who was I? Just a guy with a hard hat in a lonely house. About a week later, Sarah announced she was making a lifestyle change. "I've joined a gym." She told me over breakfast on a Saturday morning. She was poking at a grapefruit, avoiding eye contact. "That's great," I said, genuinely trying to be supportive. "Which one?" "The one near the mall." "No," she said quickly. "Platinum Fitness. It's on the north side." "Oh," I frowned. "The north side. Sarah, that's a 30-minute drive. There are 3 gyms closer to us. It's exclusive, she said, her tone defensive. They have specialized trainers. I need structure, David. I've been feeling sluggish, and I want to get in shape. You're always lifting things at work, so you don't understand, but I sit at a desk all day. Okay, I said, raising my hands in surrender. If it makes you happy, go for it. How much is it? It's an investment, she said vaguely. I saw the charge on the credit card statement a few days later. $500 a month. Plus a $300 initiation fee. Plus another $200 for supplements. I whistled when I saw the bill, but I kept my mouth shut. If it made her happy, if it brought the spark back, it was worth it. But the gym didn't bring the spark back to us. It just took Sarah away more often. She started going 3 times a week. Then 4. Then every evening after work and Saturday mornings, she would leave the house wearing brand new, expensive workout gear. Tight leggings, matching sports bras, designer sneakers. And return 3 hours later, flushed, sweating, and oddly euphoric. But here was the thing, she never showered at the gym. She would come home, bypass me completely, and lock herself in the bathroom for 45 minutes. One evening in December, about 3 weeks into this new routine, she came home later than usual. It was almost 9:00 p.m. I had been waiting to eat dinner with her. A lasagna that was now rapidly drying out in the oven. She burst through the door, glowing. Her hair was messy, her face was flushed pink, and she had an energy about her that I hadn't seen in years. Wow, must have been a killer workout, I said, trying to keep the resentment out of my voice as I pulled the lasagna out. It was amazing, she breathed, dropping her gym bag on the floor. Brad is a miracle worker. Brad, I asked. The name hung in the air like a bad smell. My personal trainer, she said, pouring herself a glass of water and chugging it. He's incredible, David. He pushes me in ways I didn't know I could be pushed. He says I have natural flexibility. That's it. Good, I said. So Brad, what's he like? Well, she paused, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips. He's just intense. He knows exactly what my body needs. He's very hands-on with his corrections, making sure my form is perfect. I felt a prickle of jealousy, sharp and hot. Hands-on, huh? She rolled her eyes. Don't be gross, David. It's professional. He's a trainer. It's his job to touch me to correct my posture. I didn't say it was gross. I lied. $500 a month. I hope he's good. He's worth every penny, she said, and the way she said it, with a strange, breathless emphasis, made my stomach turn. She went upstairs to shower, and I was left alone with the lasagna. Curiosity, or maybe masochism, got the better of me. I walked over to her gym bag, which she had left by the door. I knew I shouldn't snoop, but the suspicion was like an itch I couldn't reach. I unzipped the main compartment. Inside was a towel, a water bottle, and her changing clothes. Everything seemed normal. I dug a little deeper, moving the towel aside. At the bottom of the bag, buried under her sneakers, was a receipt. It wasn't from the gym. It was from a smoothie bar located about 5 miles away from the gym in the opposite direction of our house. The timestamp was 7:45 p.m. If she was working out until 8:30, how was she buying a smoothie 5 miles away at 7:45? I stared at the slip of paper, my mind racing. Maybe she left early. Maybe she went before the workout. But the timeline didn't fit. She left work at 6:00. The drive to the gym was 30 minutes. That put her there at 6:30. If she worked out for 2 hours, I put the receipt back, zipped the bag, and sat down at the kitchen table. When she came downstairs, showered and smelling of lavender, she seemed lighter, happier. Is dinner ready? She asked cheerfully. Sarah, I asked, keeping my voice steady. How was the traffic tonight? Oh, terrible, she said effortlessly, grabbing a plate. Gridlock on the highway. That's why I was late. Barely moved for 20 minutes. Right, I said. Traffic. I watched her eat, chatting idly about her day, lying to my face with the ease of a sociopath. She wasn't in traffic. She was at a smoothie bar. And she wasn't alone. I could feel it. The Brad comments became a staple of our conversations. It was always, Brad says this, or Brad thinks I should eat more protein, or Brad says sitting is the new smoking. It was like living with a ghost, a third person in our marriage who had more influence over my wife than I did. I decided I needed to see this guy. I needed to see the man who was fixing my wife while I was busy paying the bills. A few days later, I left work early again. I didn't tell Sarah. I drove to Platinum Fitness. I walked in, flashing a guest pass I'd printed online. The place was like a nightclub. Dim lighting, thumping bass, neon lights. People who looked like Greek gods were lifting weights that cost more than my truck. I scanned the room. I didn't know what Brad looked like, but I figured I'd know him when I saw him. I found Sarah in the stretching area. She was on a yoga mat, doing some kind of deep lunge. Standing over her was a guy who looked like he'd been carved out of mahogany. He was about my age, maybe younger, with bleached tips in his hair and a tank top that was struggling to contain his ego. He was laughing, his hand resting casually on Sarah's lower back, way lower than necessary for a posture correction. Sarah was looking up at him, beaming, her face flushed with a mixture of exertion and adoration. I stood behind a row of treadmills, watching. It wasn't explicitly sexual, not in a way I could call out right there without looking like a crazy, jealous husband. But the intimacy was undeniable. The way they leaned into each other. The inside jokes, the lack of personal space. Then I saw it. Brad leaned down to whisper something in her ear. Sarah giggled, a high, girlish sound I hadn't heard in years, and playfully smacked his arm. He grabbed her hand, held it for a second too long, and then let go. My blood boiled. I wanted to march over there and smash his face in with a dumbbell. I wanted to scream at Sarah. But I didn't. I'm a site manager. I know that if you start swinging a sledgehammer without a plan, you just end up hurting yourself. I turned around and walked out. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, shaking with rage. I texted her. Hey, working late tonight. Be home around 9. She replied instantly. Okay, babe, I'm just finishing up at the gym. Talk later. I watched the entrance. 10 minutes later, Sarah and Brad walked out together. They didn't go to their separate cars. They walked to the back of the parking lot, to a sleek black sports car. They stood there talking for a moment. Then Brad leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was deep, hungry, and familiar. Sarah kissed him back, her hands going to his neck. I slumped down in my seat, the air leaving my lungs. It was one thing to suspect it. It was another thing to see it. My wife, the woman I built a life for, making out with a guy named Brad in a gym parking lot. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I watched them get into their separate cars and drive off. I drove home in a daze, my mind oscillating between grief and a cold, hard fury. I needed a plan. But first, I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. I needed to know what was happening in those sessions that she was paying $500 a month for. The days following the parking lot incident were a blur of suppressed rage. I went to work. I managed the site. I came home, and I played the role of the oblivious husband. It was the hardest acting gig of my life. Every time she mentioned the gym, I had to bite the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Every time she smiled at her phone, I wanted to throw it through the window. But I needed more than just a kiss in a parking lot. I needed undeniable proof. I needed to know the full extent of the betrayal, so that when I dropped the hammer, there would be no wiggling out of it. No, it was just one time, no. We were just caught up in the moment. I needed ammunition. The opportunity came on a Thursday. Sarah had left for work in a rush, claiming she had an early meeting. About an hour after she left, I realized she had forgotten her laptop charger on the kitchen counter. She usually panicked without it. I texted her, "You left your charger. Want me to drop it off?" No reply. I waited an hour. Still nothing. I decided to check her location. We shared locations on our phones for safety, a feature we set up years ago and never turned off. I opened the app. Her dot wasn't at her office downtown. It was at the gym, at 9:00 a.m. on a workday. I zoomed in. She wasn't just at the gym. The dot was stationary in the parking lot for about 20 minutes. Then it started moving, but not toward work. It was heading toward a residential area. Brad's area, if my internet stalking of him the previous night was accurate. So, they were skipping work to be together. I called my work and told them I was taking a sick day. I sat in the silent house, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I wandered around, looking at the photos on the wall. Our wedding, our trip to Hawaii, the day we bought the house. They felt like artifacts from a civilization that had died out. I went into our bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her nightstand. Sarah was a private person. She hated when I went through her things. Everyone needs their own space, she used to say. I had respected that. I never opened her drawers, never checked her purse. I trusted her. Trust is a funny thing, it blinds you. But once the blindfold is ripped off, you see everything with agonizing clarity. I opened the top drawer of her nightstand, just the usual clutter. Hand cream, a book she hadn't read in months, some hair ties. I opened the second drawer. Papers, old receipts, a spare pair of glasses. I reached for the bottom drawer. It was stuck. I jiggled it, pulling harder. It gave way with a rattle. Inside, hidden beneath a stack of old magazines, was a small, velvet pouch. It looked out of place, like something you'd hide jewelry in. My heart hammered against my ribs as I reached for it. I loosened the drawstrings and dumped the contents onto the duvet. It wasn't jewelry. It was a collection of items that made the bile rise in my throat. First, there was a prepaid burner phone. I pressed the power button. It was locked, but the background image was a selfie of Sarah and Brad shirtless in what looked like a hotel room. They were laughing, looking at the camera with the arrogance of two people who think they've outsmarted the world. Next, a receipt from a boutique hotel downtown. Weekend getaway, package from 3 months ago. The same weekend she told me she was at a marketing conference in Portland. And finally, a bottle. It was a sleek, black bottle of high-end personal lubricant. Velvet touch. The label read, "Warming sensation." I stared at it. We didn't use this. We had a bottle of generic stuff in the bathroom cabinet that hadn't been touched in 6 months. This was new. It was half empty. But it wasn't just the existence of the bottle that hurt, it was the specificity of it. She had bought this specifically for him. For their time together, she had shopped for it, paid for it, and hidden it in her nightstand, right next to the bed where I slept every night. It was a physical manifestation of her double life. I held the bottle in my hand, squeezing it until the plastic creaked. This was it. This was the lubricant that smoothed the friction of her betrayal. This was the accessory to the crime. I put everything back exactly as I found it. The phone, the receipt, the bottle. I slid the drawer shut. I needed to talk to someone. I couldn't keep this poison inside me any longer. I drove to Mike's office. Mike has been my best friend since high school. He's a divorce lawyer, a shark in a suit who has seen every kind of marital disaster imaginable. When I walked into his office, he took one look at my face and told his secretary to hold his calls. "David," he said, standing up. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Sit down, Scotch." "It's 1100 a.m., Mike," I said, collapsing onto his leather couch. "You look like you need it," he said, pouring 2 glasses. I told him everything. The distance, the gym, the parking lot kiss, the burner phone, the hotel receipt, the lube. Mike listened in silence, his face hardening with every detail. He didn't look surprised, which made me feel even worse. "I'm sorry, Dave," he said finally, sliding a glass across the desk. "I really am. Sarah, I never thought she'd be the type, but in my line of work, you learn that everyone is the type given the right circumstances." "I want to divorce her," I said, staring into the amber liquid. "I want to take everything, the house, the car, the savings. I want to leave her with nothing but her gym membership." Mike nodded slowly. "We can do that. Given the evidence, if we can document it, infidelity can play a huge role, especially if she's using marital funds to finance the affair. That $500 gym fee, the hotel, that's dissipation of assets. Judges hate that. I don't just want a divorce, Mike," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I want her to hurt. Not physically. Well, maybe a little. But I want her to feel the humiliation I feel. I want to pop that bubble she's living in." Mike leaned back, studying me. "Revenge is tricky, Dave. It feels good in the moment, but it can backfire. You have to be smart, you have to be cold. No screaming matches. No public scenes until the paperwork is ready." "I'm not going to scream," I said. A dark idea was starting to form in the back of my mind. A seed planted by the sight of that black bottle in the nightstand. "I'm going to be very, very quiet." "What are you thinking?" Mike asked warily. "She keeps up special supplies in the nightstand," I said. "For her sessions with Brad. She thinks she's so clever, hiding it right under my nose. And I said, a grim smile touching my lips. "I work in construction, Mike. I know a thing or two about bonding agents. I know about adhesives that are designed to hold steel and concrete together. Adhesives that don't let go." Mike's eyes widened. "David." "No, you can't be serious." "Why not?" I asked. "If they want to be together so badly, I'm just helping them bond. That's assault." Mike warned, though the corner of his mouth twitched. "Technically, maybe. It's a gray area if she uses it on herself, or him voluntarily. I won't touch them," I said. "I'll just reorganize the drawers, swap out a few labels. If they don't check what they're using, that's on them, right?" Mike sighed, rubbing his temples. "As your lawyer, I am telling you this is a terrible idea that could expose you to liability. Do not do this." He paused, took a sip of scotch, and looked me in the eye. "But as your friend, if you're going to do it, make sure you don't leave fingerprints. And make sure you have an alibi." I finished my drink. "I have plenty of alibis. I'm the hard-working husband who's never home, remember?" I left Mike's office with a plan. It was dangerous, it was petty, and it was probably illegal. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the site manager again. I had identified the structural failure, and now I was preparing the demolition. I drove to the hardware supply store, the one for professionals, not the big box store. I walked down the aisle smelling of sawdust and chemicals. I stopped in front of the industrial adhesive section. I wasn't looking for super glue. That was amateur hour. I was looking for something stronger. Something that required a solvent to remove. Something that set in seconds and cured in minutes. I found it. A 2-part epoxy used for bonding PVC piping. But that would burn too much, they'd notice immediately. No, I needed something subtler. Then I saw it. High viscosity cyanoacrylate. Medical grade, or close to it. Used for quick fixes on job sites. It was clear it had a similar consistency to the gel in the bottle in Sarah's drawer, and it was notoriously difficult to remove from skin without acetone. I bought 2 bottles. I drove home, my heart pounding a steady, heavy rhythm. Sarah wouldn't be home for hours. I had time. I went upstairs to the bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer. I took out the black bottle of Velvet Touch. I took it into the bathroom. I emptied the contents into the sink, watching the expensive lubricant wash down the drain. Then, with the steady hands of a man who has poured concrete foundations for skyscrapers, I filled the bottle with the industrial adhesive. It looked identical, clear, viscous, harmless. I screwed the cap back on. I wiped the bottle down to ensure no residue was on the outside. I placed it back in the velvet pouch. I put the pouch back in the drawer under the magazines exactly as I had found it. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for them to spring it. The days after I swapped the bottle were a test of endurance I hadn't prepared for. It's one thing to set a trap, it's another to live in the house with the prey, knowing that at any moment the spring could snap. I found myself watching Sarah with a morbid fascination. Every time she checked her phone, every time she hummed a tune while making coffee, I wondered, is today the day? But the waiting game wasn't just about passivity. I needed to be absolutely certain about the timeline. If this was going to work, if I was going to catch them in the act, or rather, the immediate aftermath. I needed to know their schedule down to the minute. A trap is useless if the hunter isn't there to witness the catch. I went back to work with a renewed, albeit manic, energy. I needed to maintain the facade of normalcy. Normal David was stressed about deadlines, complained about the rain delaying the pour, and came home tired. So that's what I did. I even brought home blueprints one night and spread them out on the dining table, pretending to calculate load-bearing capacities while actually cross-referencing Sarah's gym check-ins with her credit card activity. The pattern was undeniable. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5:30 p.m., say. 6:00 p.m. arrives at Platinum Fitness. 6:45 p.m. leaves gym, sometimes after only 30-40 minutes. 7:00 p.m. arrives at Brad's apartment complex. The Oaks at Riverview, a trendy spot for young professionals. 8:30 p.m. he leaves Brad's. 9:00 p.m. he home, flushed and exhausted from leg day. The Saturday. 9:00 a.m. and morning spin class, which she never actually attended based on the lack of sweat on her spinning shoes. 12:00 p.m. and returns home. This was the routine. The predictability of it was almost insulting. They had grown complacent. They thought I was the dumb, blue-collar husband who couldn't see past the dust on his own safety glasses. They thought they were untouchable. I decided the trap would be sprung on a Friday. Fridays were their longest sessions. They often pushed it to 9:00 p.m., likely celebrating the start of the weekend. It gave me the biggest window for execution. But before the main event, I needed to make sure the supplies were actually moving. On Thursday morning, after Sarah left for work, I checked the nightstand. The velvet pouch was gone. My heart skipped a beat. She had taken it. That meant she was restocking for the weekend. Or maybe she had taken it to leave at his place. If she left it there, my plan to catch them might be delayed, but the end result would be the same. The adhesive didn't have an expiration date on its potency. I felt a strange mix of nausea and adrenaline. The bottle was in play. The loaded gun was in her purse. That evening, Thursday, she came home early. She was in a good mood, almost manic. She was humming as she chopped vegetables for a salad. "You're cheerful," I noted, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Just glad it's almost the weekend," she chirped. "It's been a long week. The Delta account is finally stabilizing." "That's good," I said. "So, big plans for the weekend?" As she paused, the knife hovering over a cucumber. "Not really. Just the usual. Gym on Saturday morning, maybe some shopping." "Why? Did you want to do something?" "I might have to work Saturday. I lied." "We're behind on the framing for the complex. I need to supervise the crew." "Oh," she said, and I saw the relief wash over her face instantly. "That's a shame. But you have to do what you have to do." "Yeah," I said, taking a long sip of beer. "I have to do what I have to do." Later that night, as we got ready for bed, I watched her. She was applying night cream in the mirror, her movements precise in practice. I looked at her reflection, the woman I had loved, the woman I had promised to protect. Was there any part of her that felt guilty? Was there any hesitation? "Sarah," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. She didn't look away from her reflection. "Are you happy?" She stopped rubbing the cream into her cheek. She met my eyes in the mirror. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw a flicker of something. Feedy. Resentment. "Of course I'm happy, David," she said, her voice tight. "Why would you ask that?" Just lately, you seem distant. I know I work a lot. I know I'm not the most exciting guy. She turned around, sighing. David, don't start this tonight. I'm tired. We're fine. Everything is fine, okay? I said quietly. Just checking. She turned off the light and climbed into bed, turning her back to me immediately. Good night. Good night, I whispered to the darkness. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there listening to her breathing, wondering if she was dreaming of him. I wondered if she was dreaming of the life she thought she was building, unaware that I had already poured the concrete around her feet. Friday morning arrived with a gray, drizzly sky. Classic Seattle weather. It felt appropriate. Sarah left for work at 7:30 a.m. She kissed me on the cheek, a dry, obligatory peck. See you tonight. Don't work too hard, you two, I said. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I sprang into action. I called my foreman, Tony. Tony, it's Dave. I'm not coming in today. Everything all right, boss? Tony asked, his voice rough from decades of smoking.
Yeah, just personal business.
Handle the site. Don't let the electricians cut corners on the wiring in Block B. You got it. Hope everything's okay. It will be, I said. It will be. I spent the morning preparing. I packed a bag, though I didn't really know what for. Maybe I thought I wouldn't be coming back to this house. I put my laptop, some clothes, and important documents in the trunk of my truck. At 1:00 p.m., I drove to the vicinity of Brad's apartment complex. The Oaks at Riverview. It was a gated community, but gated is a loose term. I knew the code, 1234, because I had seen a delivery driver use it the other day while I was doing my recon. I parked my truck a block away, on a side street, so it wouldn't be spotted. I had a clear view of the entrance. I waited. Hours ticked by. I listened to talk radio. I drank lukewarm coffee from a thermos. I watched people come and go, young couples, walking dogs, people jogging in the rain, normal lives, lives that weren't about to implode. 5:30 p.m., Sarah left work. I tracked her dot on my phone. It moved steadily toward the gym. 6:00 p.m. She arrived at Platinum Fitness. I sat up straighter. This was it. The countdown had begun. 6:40 p.m. Her dot started moving again. Early, they were eager today. I watched the blue dot travel down the highway, turn onto the river road, and approach the complex. At 16:55 p.m., Sarah's white SUV turned into the entrance of the Oaks. She punched in the code, and the gate swung open. She drove in and parked in a visitor spot near Building 4. 2 minutes later, Brad's car pulled in. The black sports car. He parked right next to her. I watched through binoculars as they got out. They didn't embrace right there. Too risky in the parking lot. They walked quickly toward the building entrance, not touching, but moving in sync. Brad held the door open for her. She slipped inside. I checked my watch. 7:02 p.m. They were inside. Now the hard part. The waiting. I knew they wouldn't use the supplies immediately. There would be talk. A drink, maybe. Foreplay. I estimated I had at least 30 minutes before the trap was sprung. I sat in the truck, the rain drumming on the roof. I felt a strange sense of detachment. It was like watching a demolition charge timer count down. You know the explosion is coming. You know the building is going to fall, and all you can do is stand back and watch the dust cloud rise. 7:45 p.m. I was still in my truck, eyes glued to the third floor window of Brad's apartment. I knew it was his because I'd seen him on the balcony during my previous recon sessions. The lights were dim. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom, asking if we were coming for Sunday dinner. The normalcy of it jarred me. I ignored it. I couldn't think about pot roast and family gossip when my wife was currently upstairs with another man, about to engage in an act that would literally bind them together. I started to imagine the scene upstairs. The hushed whispers, the shedding of clothes, the reaching into the purse for the velvet pouch. Did she shake the bottle? I wondered. Did she notice the consistency was slightly different? The adhesive I chose, Cyano Lock 500 is not its real name, but close enough, is designed for high-stress industrial applications. It bonds skin instantly. It cures in the presence of moisture. And unlike standard super glue, it doesn't just get brittle and flake off. It holds. It holds with a tensile strength of 3,000 psi. If they applied it where I thought they would... I checked my watch again. 8:15 p.m. Still nothing. The lights in the apartment hadn't changed. No commotion. No screaming. Doubt began to creep in. Did I mess up? Did she throw the bottle away? Did they decide not to use it tonight? Maybe they were just talking. Maybe they were breaking up. My mind started to spiral. What if this was all for nothing? What if I was just a sad man sitting in a truck in the rain while my wife was simply having an affair that would end quietly in a year or two? Then it happened. 8:03 p.m. The lights in the apartment flared on. Not the soft bedroom light, but the harsh, bright overhead lights in the living room and kitchen. Shadows moved frantically across the blinds. It looked like a struggle or a panic. I rolled down my window, straining to hear. The rain was too loud. I couldn't hear anything from the third floor. But the movement in the window was undeniable. Someone was running back and forth. Then the blinds were yanked open. I saw Brad. He was naked from the waist up, so I couldn't see below the windowsill. He was frantically pacing, holding a phone to his ear. He looked terrified. He was gesturing wildly with his free hand. Then Sarah appeared. She was wrapped in a sheet or maybe a towel. She was sobbing. I could tell by the way her shoulders were heaving, the way her head was buried in her hands. She collapsed onto a chair that was just out of view. My heart hammered against my ribs. It worked. But how bad was it? The panic suggested it was catastrophic. I grabbed my phone. I debated calling the police myself, anonymously reporting a disturbance, but I didn't need to. 8:28 p.m. Sirens. At first it was a distant wail, cutting through the rain. Then it grew louder, closer. Blue and red lights began to flash off the wet pavement at the end of the block. A fire truck turned the corner first, its air horn blasting. Then an ambulance. Then a police cruiser. They screeched to a halt in front of the apartment complex. I watched as the paramedics jumped out, grabbing their bags. Firefighters in full gear ran toward the building entrance. This was it. The emergency call I had anticipated in my framework, but seeing it in reality was visceral. It wasn't a story anymore. It was real people, real panic, real consequences. I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and sudden. Did I go too far? This was medical. This was dangerous. But then I remembered the smirk on Brad's face in the parking lot. I remembered Sarah's lies about traffic while she was sipping smoothies with him. I remembered the 3 years of cold shoulders and the "I'm tired" excuses while she gave her best energy to a stranger. I hardened my heart. They made the choices. They bought the bottle. They used it. I just changed the variables. I decided to move closer. I needed to see this. I pulled my hoodie up, grabbed an umbrella from the back seat, and got out of the truck. I walked down the sidewalk, blending in with a few other neighbors who had come out to see what the commotion was about. "What's going on?" A woman with a poodle asked me as I approached the gate. "No idea," I said, my voice steady. "Hopefully everyone is okay." "I saw the lights go on and heard screaming," she said, clutching her dog. "Sounded like someone was being murdered." Terrible," I muttered. We stood there, a small crowd gathering in the rain, watching the entrance of Building 4. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then the doors opened. The paramedics came out first. They were pushing a gurney. But it wasn't a normal exit. They were moving slowly, awkwardly. On the gurney was Sarah. She was covered in a sheet up to her neck, her face pale and streaked with mascara. She was crying, a low, keening sound that drifted over the rain. But she wasn't alone on the gurney. Walking beside the gurney, hunched over in an incredibly awkward, sideways shuffle, was Brad. He was also covered in a sheet, which was draped over him and connected to the sheet covering Sarah. He wasn't walking freely. He was attached. A ripple of shock and confusion went through the crowd as he stuck to her. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." A teenager next to me giggled, pulling out his phone to record. No way. The paramedics were trying to coordinate the movement. Step, step, okay, lift. One of them instructed. Brad looked like a man whose life had just ended. His face was a mask of sheer horror and humiliation. He was trying to hide his face from the crowd, but it was impossible given his proximity to Sarah. He had to waddle alongside the gurney, his body contorted to minimize the pain of the bond. It became clear to everyone watching what had happened. The physics of their position. Sarah lying down. Brad hunched over her midsection, told the story better than any headline could. They were fused. "Oh, that is nasty," the woman with the poodle said, recoiling. "It's glue." The teenager shouted, zooming in with his phone. "I bet it's glue! That happened on a show once!" I stood there in the rain, the water dripping off my umbrella. I watched my wife and her lover being loaded into the back of the ambulance. It was a logistical nightmare. They couldn't lift the gurney normally because Brad was attached. They had to lower the gurney, have Brad climb into the ambulance first, then lift Sarah in while he awkwardly maneuvered inside. It was a farce. It was a tragedy. It was perfect. As the ambulance doors slammed shut, shutting out the sight of their shame, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't joy, it was relief. The secret was out. The lie was physically, undeniably exposed. The police officer on the scene was talking to the fire chief. I caught a snippet of their conversation as I walked past. Medical adhesive, or super glue. They said they thought it was lube. Hell of a mistake, the chief grunted. Going to need surgery to separate them without tearing skin. I turned away and walked back to my truck. My phone buzzed again. It was Sarah. Or rather, it was Sarah's phone. I answered. "Hello. Is this David?" A stranger's voice. Urgent. Professional. "Yes, this is David." "Who is this?" This is Paramedic Miller with Seattle Grace. We have your wife, Sarah. She's been involved in a medical incident. Is she okay? I asked, feigning panic. Was it a car accident? I'm at home. She should be at the gym. She's stable, sir, but she's being transported to the ER. It's a bit complicated. We need you to come to the hospital immediately. I'm on my way, I said. Oh, God, please tell me she's all right. She's not in life-threatening danger, sir. Just please come to the ER. I hung up. I started the truck. I wasn't going to the hospital to comfort her. I was going to witness the finale. I was going to play the role of the devastated husband one last time, right in front of the doctors, the nurses, and Brad. I pulled out onto the road, following the fading sirens. The drive to the hospital was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I had to mentally prepare myself. I had to transition from the architect of revenge to the distraught husband. It was a delicate balance. If I seemed too calm, they'd suspect me. If I seemed too angry, I'd look like the aggressor. I needed to be confused, worried, and then, upon discovery, shocked. I arrived at the emergency room entrance. The rain was coming down harder now. I ran inside, shaking off my umbrella. My wife. I gasped to the receptionist. Sarah, they just brought her in by ambulance. Someone called me. The receptionist typed for a moment, then looked up with a strange expression. Her eyes darted around, avoiding mine. Oh, yes, Sarah! She's in trauma room 3. But, sir, you can't go in just yet. The doctors are assessing the situation. Assessing what? I demanded, leaning over the desk. Is she hurt? Is she bleeding? It's sensitive, she stammered. A doctor will come out to speak with you shortly. Please, take a seat. I paced the waiting room. It was Friday night, so the ER was a zoo. A guy with a broken nose, a kid with a fever, a drunk shouting at security. I ignored them all. About 10 minutes later, a weary-looking doctor in blue scrubs came out. He looked like he was trying to suppress a migraine, or perhaps a laugh. Family of Sarah, he called out. That's me, I said, rushing over. I'm her husband, David. Doctor, what's going on? Nobody will tell me anything. The doctor sighed, taking off his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. Mr. David, your wife is stable. Her vitals are fine. She is not in physical danger. Then why the ambulance? Why the secrecy? There has been an accident involving a foreign substance, the doctor said, choosing his words carefully. Your wife and a companion have been fused together. I froze. I let my jaw drop. I widened my eyes. Fused? What do you mean fused? Like stuck, chemically bonded? The doctor clarified. It appears a high-strength industrial adhesive was used in place of personal lubricant. I stared at him, letting the silence stretch. Adhesive and a companion? Who is the companion? The doctor looked uncomfortable. A male. We haven't identified him yet, but he is currently attached to your wife, in an intimate manner. I staggered back, grabbing a chair for support. Intimate? You mean having sex? Yes, sir. It appears they were engaged in intercourse when the bonding occurred. The adhesive said instantly. They are currently locked together. I put my head in my hands. Oh my God, she told me she was at the gym. I'm sorry, sir. The doctor said, his voice softer now. It's a shock. We are working on a solution. We've applied solvents, but this glue is incredibly strong. We may have to perform a minor surgical procedure to separate them without causing severe skin avulsion. Can I see her? I asked, looking up with watery eyes. I wouldn't recommend it right now. Sir, it's a very graphic scene, and the male is present. She's my wife, I said, my voice hardening. If she's in there with another man, stuck to him, I want to see it. I need to see it. I need to know this is real. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. Okay. But please, keep your distance. The situation is volatile. They are both in significant distress and pain. He led me down the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. We passed nurses whispering in clusters. I knew exactly who they were talking about. The glue couple. It would be the legend of the hospital for years. We reached trauma room 3. The curtain was drawn. The doctor pulled it back slowly. The scene inside was chaotic and pathetic. Sarah was lying on the bed, covered by a sheet. Brad was lying on his side, pressed against her, his legs tangled with hers under the sheet. They looked like a grotesque two-headed beast. There were 3 nurses and another doctor in the room. The smell of acetone was overpowering. When I walked in, Sarah turned her head. Her eyes were red and swollen. When she saw me, the color drained from her face completely. David, she whispered, her voice cracking. Brad tried to turn his head, but his position made it difficult. He saw me and squeezed his eyes shut, burying his face in the pillow next to Sarah's shoulder. The gym, huh? I said, my voice cutting through the room like a cold wind. David, please, Sarah sobbed. It's not. I can explain. I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. You're glued to another man. Sarah literally glued to him. What is there to explain? Did you trip and fall onto his dick? The nurses exchanged glances. One of them looked away to hide a smile. Sir, please, the doctor warned. Let's keep it civil. Civil. I pointed at them. That's my wife. That's the guy she's been training with. And now I find out that while I was working to pay for this house and her lifestyle, she was buying industrial glue to spice things up. It wasn't glue! Brad shouted from under the sheet, his voice muffled.
It was supposed to be lube. Someone switched it.
I looked at Brad. Someone switched it. Who would do that, Brad? The lube fairy. Brad went silent. David, help us, Sarah pleaded. It hurts. Please just help us get out of this. I can't help you, I said, stepping back. I build houses. Sarah, I don't separate cheaters. That's a job for the professionals. I looked at the doctor. Do whatever you have to do to get them apart. Bill me for her half. Send his bill to his address. I'm done. David, wait! Sarah screamed as I turned to leave. Don't leave me here like this! I stopped at the curtain. I looked back at them. A tangled mess of betrayal and adhesive. You left me a long time ago, Sarah, I said. You just forgot to tell me. Well, now I know. I walked out of the trauma room. I walked down the hallway, past the staring nurses, past the reception desk. I walked out into the rain. I took a deep breath of the cold, wet air. It tasted like freedom, but it wasn't over yet. The glue was just the beginning. Now came the fallout, the legal battle, the public shame. I got into my truck and drove to a motel. I wasn't going back to that house tonight. I needed to sleep. And for the first time in months, I knew I would sleep soundly. The next morning, I woke up in the motel room feeling surprisingly refreshed. My phone was blowing up. 27 missed calls from Sarah. 10 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably her parents or friends she had panicked and called. And 3 from Mike, my lawyer. I called Mike back first. David. Mike answered on the first ring. What the hell is going on? I just got a call from a lawyer representing a Brad Stevens. He's talking about assault, negligence, and superglue? Good morning, Mike. I said, pouring myself a terrible motel coffee. It wasn't superglue. It was Sienna Lock 500. And I have no idea how it got in that bottle. Sarah must have bought the wrong thing. David. Mike's voice was stern, but I could hear the incredulity. Are you telling me you had nothing to do with this? I'm telling you that my wife, who was cheating on me, used a product in the privacy of her lover's bedroom. I wasn't even there. I was at home. Well, I was on my way home when the hospital called. Okay, Mike said slowly. Stick to that. Strictly, do not deviate. Now, tell me what happened at the hospital. I recounted the scene. The gurney, the fusion, the doctor's diagnosis, the confrontation. Mike let out a low whistle. Jesus, Dave, that is medieval. Are they separated yet? I don't know. I left while they were still figuring out the surgical approach. All right. Here's the situation. Brad's lawyer is making noise, but he's in a weak position. He was sleeping with a married woman. He's humiliated. He doesn't want this going to trial any more than Sarah does. If he sues, everything becomes public record. The affair, the glue, the photos, everything. Exactly, I said. He won't sue. He's a personal trainer. His image is everything. Being the guy who got glued to a client's wife isn't exactly a great marketing strategy. And Sarah, Mike asked. Sarah is done, I said. I want the papers filed Monday. Irreconcilable differences. Adultery. And I want the house, Mike promised, with this kind of evidence. And the public embarrassment factor. She'll sign anything to make this go away quietly. I hung up and checked the news. It hadn't hit the major outlets yet, but there were rumblings on social media. A tweet from a nursey anonymously, of course about the Siamese twins of sin in the ER. A Reddit thread and a local sub asking about the commotion at the Oaks. It was starting to leak. I decided to go to the hospital one last time. Not to see her, but to retrieve her things, and to make sure the narrative was set. When I arrived, the atmosphere was different. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a quiet, judgmental snickering. I went to the nurse's station. I'm here for Sarah's discharge paperwork, or to pick up her personal effects.
Oh, Mr. Wilson,
The nurse said, trying to keep a straight face. She's recovering. They managed to separate them around 400 a.m. Surgery, minor, some skin loss, a lot of irritation, but they are physically apart. Mr. Stevens was discharged an hour ago. He left very quickly.
Out the back exit? And Sarah?
She's in room 402. She's sedated but awake. I walked up to room 402. I pushed the door open. Sarah was lying in the bed, looking small and broken. She had bandages around her midsection and thighs. Her face was puffy from crying. She looked up when I entered. David, she croaked. I spoke to Mike. I said, standing at the foot of the bed. He's drawing up the papers. David, please, she wept. It was a mistake. I was stupid. I was bored. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough for you to buy special supplies for it, I said. It meant enough for you to lie to my face every single day for 6 months. I love you, she said, the words sounding hollow and desperate. No, you don't, I said. You love the life I provide. You love the safety, and you love the thrill of stepping out on it. Well, the thrill is gone, Sarah. It's just the glue left now. He tricked me. She tried, shifting the blame. Brad, he said it would be fun. He said that. I don't care about Brad, I interrupted. Brad is a footnote. This is about us. And there is no us anymore. What are you going to do? She asked, fear creeping into her eyes. I'm going to live in my house, I said. You're going to stay at your parents'. I've already packed a bag for you and left it on the porch. Do not come inside. If you need anything else, call Mike. You can't kick me out. Watch me. Or better yet, try to explain to a judge why the woman who got medically fused to her lover deserves to keep the marital home. She slumped back against the pillows, defeated. She knew I had won. She knew the sheer absurdity of her situation had stripped her of any leverage. Goodbye, Sarah, I said. I turned and walked out. As I walked down the hospital corridor, I saw a familiar face. It was Brad. He hadn't left yet. He was standing by the pharmacy counter waiting for a prescription, wearing oversized sweatpants and a hoodie pulled low. He was walking gingerly, clearly in pain. He saw me. He froze. I walked right up to him. He flinched, expecting a punch. I leaned in close. Hope the workout was worth it, Brad, I whispered. Work on that core strength. You're going to need it to carry the weight of this story for the rest of your life. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the floor, a broken man. I walked out of the hospital, into the sunlight. The rain had stopped. The air was crisp. If you think the hospital was the climax, you don't understand how small towns, or even suburbs of big cities, work. The hospital was just the inciting incident. The real show was the social fallout. After leaving Brad quivering at the pharmacy counter, I drove straight to the house. It felt different now. It wasn't a shared space anymore. It was a battlefield I had successfully defended. I changed the locks immediately. I called a locksmith on the way, paying the emergency weekend rate without blinking. By the time I arrived, he was already there drilling out the old deadbolt. Lost your keys? The locksmith asked, making small talk. Something like that, I said. Lost the keys, lost the wife. Cleaning house. He nodded sagely and didn't ask another question. That afternoon, while Sarah was presumably being discharged into the care of her bewildered parents, the digital tsunami hit. It started with a local blog. Medical mishap at the Oaks Lovers Fused in bizarre accident. They didn't name names, but they described a 30-year-old marketing executive and a 28-year-old personal trainer. Then came the Facebook comments. Wet, is that the trainer from Platinum Fitness? The guy with the bleached tips?
Gee, I know who the marketing and exec is!
She works for company name. She was always posting about her gains. Fused, like glue. How does that even happen? By Sunday morning, it wasn't a rumor, it was local legend. The super glue lovers. Memes started popping up in local groups. A picture of 2 Lego figures stuck together. A tube of crazy glue with Brad's face photoshopped on it. I didn't have to lift a finger. The sheer absurdity of the event did the work for me. On Monday morning, I went to work. I walked onto the construction site at 6:30 a.m. My foreman, Tony, was already there, holding a tablet and laughing with a couple of the electricians. They saw me coming and fell silent, looking awkward. Morning, boss, Tony said, hiding the tablet behind his back.
Morning, Tony. You can show me.
I said, pouring coffee. He sheepishly handed me the tablet. It was a meme. When the bond is stronger than the marriage. It showed a stock photo of a construction worker giving a thumbs up next to a bottle of industrial adhesive. I laughed. A genuine belly laugh. It's funny, Tony, I said. It's hilarious. Don't worry about it. The crew relaxed. They knew. Everyone knew. And instead of looking at me with pity, the poor cuckolded husband, they looked at me with a strange kind of respect. I hadn't just been cheated on. I had survived the most ridiculous cheating scandal in the county's history with my dignity intact. I was the guy who walked away while the house burned down behind him. Later that day, Mike called. It's done, he said. We served her parents' house this morning. She signed. She's not contesting the house. She's not asking for alimony. She just wants it to be over. That was fast, I said. She's terrified, David. Her company, well, let's just say they have a moral turpitude clause in her contract. When the news started trending locally, they put her on indefinite administrative leave. She's likely going to be fired. She can't afford a legal battle. She just wants to disappear. And Brad has gone dark. Deleted his Instagram. Quit the gym. Rumor has it he's moving back to Ohio to live with his sister. His lawyer sent a cease and desist to the blog, but the damage is done. He's radioactive. I sat in my office trailer, looking out at the steel skeleton of the building we were raising. It was a good feeling. The foundation was solid. The structure was rising. But Sarah wasn't done yet. She requested one final meeting. She wanted to pick up her sentimental items, things I hadn't packed in the trash bags I left on the porch. I agreed on one condition: Mike had to be present. I wasn't going to be alone with her. She came on a Wednesday evening. Her dad drove her. He stayed in the car, staring straight ahead, refusing to look at the house. He was a good man, old school. I knew he was mortified. Sarah walked in. She looked terrible. She had lost weight. She was wearing baggy sweatpants, likely to accommodate the bandages that were still healing. She moved stiffly. Mike sat at the dining table, a silent sentinel. "Hello, David," she said. "Not meeting my eyes."
Sarah.
I said. "The boxes are in the hallway. Photos, jewelry, your grandmother's vase." She nodded. She walked over to the boxes and started looking through them. She picked up a framed photo of us from our honeymoon. She stared at it for a long time. "We were happy then," she whispered. I was happy. I corrected her. "You were just waiting for something better to come along." She spun around, anger flaring up for the first time.
It wasn't like that. I was lonely, David. You were always working. You were always tired. Brad, he paid attention to me.
"And look where that attention got you," I said calmly. "It got you stuck to him in an ambulance. It got you fired."
It got you divorced? You did this?
She accused, her voice rising.
I know you did. That glue didn't just walk into the bottle. You swapped it.
Mike cleared his throat. "Sarah!" "I would advise you against making baseless accusations. Unless you have proof." She glared at Mike, then back at me. "I know you did it. You're the only one who works with that stuff." "You ruined my life." I walked over to her. I stood close enough that she had to look up at me. "I didn't ruin your life, Sarah," I said softly. "I just strengthened the bond you chose. You wanted to be with him. You wanted to sneak around. I just made sure you didn't pull away too easily. You ruined your own life the minute you decided that my love wasn't enough." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. She had no comeback. The truth was a weight she couldn't lift. "Take your boxes," I said.
And get out of my house.
She grabbed the box, tears streaming down her face again. She shuffled to the door. Before she left, she turned back one last time. "I hope you're happy alone," she spat. "I'm not alone," I said, gesturing to the empty, quiet house. "I have my peace. And that's worth more than you ever were." She slammed the door. I heard her dad's car drive away. I locked the deadbolt. I turned to Mike. "Drink?" I asked. "Make it a double," Mike said. 6 months later. The divorce was finalized in record time. I got the house, the truck, and my sanity. Sarah got her personal belongings and a tarnished reputation. She moved 2 towns over, got a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic, and keeps a very low profile. I haven't seen her since that night. Brad moved to Ohio, just as predicted. I heard from a friend at the gym that he tried to get a job at a CrossFit box there, but someone Googled his name and the glue incident came up. He's apparently working in a warehouse now. As for me, I renovated the house. Not because it needed it, but because I needed to purge the ghosts. I tore out the carpet in the bedroom and put in hardwood. I repainted the walls. I turned her reading room, set which she never used, into a home office for myself. I started dating again slowly. It's weird being single in your 30s, but I have a hell of an icebreaker story, though I usually save the glue part for the 5th or 6th date. But the biggest change wasn't the house or the women. It was me. I realized that for years, I had been the load-bearing wall for a structure that was fundamentally flawed. I was carrying all the weight, taking all the stress, while the other side was just decoration. Now, I build for myself. I still work hard, but I take weekends off. I go fishing. I bought a boat, a small one, a fixer-upper, but it's mine. One afternoon, I was at the hardware store picking up supplies for the boat. I found myself in the adhesive aisle. I stopped in front of the Ciano, Lock 500, the same black and yellow bottle. I picked it up, weighing it in my hand. It was just a bottle of chemicals. It wasn't evil. It wasn't magical. It was just a tool. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It created a permanent bond between 2 surfaces. A young guy, maybe 20, was standing next to me looking at super glues. "You fixing something?" he asked, nodding at the bottle in my hand. I smiled, a slow, genuine smile. "No," I said, putting the bottle back on the shelf. "I already fixed it, just admiring the product. It works wonders if you use it right." "Cool," the kid said, grabbing a tube of crazy glue. I walked out of the store, into the sunshine. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica, a woman I'd been seeing for a few weeks. She was a nurse, ironically enough, but she worked in pediatrics, nowhere near the ER. "Jess, hey, are we still on for dinner tonight?" I was thinking tacos. I typed back, "Tacos sound perfect." Pick you up at 7. I got into my truck. I looked at the passenger seat. It was empty. No gym bag, no secrets, no lies. I started the engine. The radio was playing a classic rock song. I rolled the windows down. Life is like construction. Sometimes you have to tear the whole thing down to the studs to find the rot. It's messy, it's expensive, and it hurts like hell. But once the demolition is done, you get to rebuild. And this time you get to choose the materials, you get to choose the design, and you get to make sure the foundation is solid. I drove toward the marina, the wind in my hair. The nightmare was over. The glue had dried, and I was finally unsticking myself from the past. Outro, Sir narrator speaking directly to the audience. So, that's my story. I went from being the oblivious husband to the architect of the stickiest revenge in history. I don't recommend solving your marital problems with industrial adhesive, legal disclaimers and all that, but I will say this: sometimes you have to let people face the consequences of their own actions, even if those consequences require a surgical team to resolve. Sarah and Brad wanted to be inseparable. I just gave them exactly what they asked for. If you enjoyed this story, or if you've ever had a sticky situation with an ex, hopefully not the sticky, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you think I went too far or not far enough, tell me that too. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, revenge, and the occasional industrial accident. Until next time, keep your foundations strong and check your labels.